The beacon had been crying for 3 days when Terran Quill finally faced the truth that no one was coming. Alone on a shattered frigate drifting in silent space, oxygen slipping away and hope nearly gone, he hears something impossible whisper through the dead wires. A voice from the broken ship itself, calling his name, asking him to save it before both of them fade into the void forever. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us where are you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. Terran Quill counted the slow beeps of the emergency beacon like raindrops on a window. Each pulse said the same thing: still alive, still waiting. He sat in the pilot's chair of the Commonwealth frigate Novastar, watching a hairline crack crawl across the forward pane like frost. Beyond it, night and scattered lights. No rescue lights, no burn of thrusters from friendly hulls. Just the calm that comes after the loud part of fear. The Draki had come and gone in a slice of an hour, quick and sure, leaving the ship hollowed. Most of the crew made it off in escape modules because Terran stayed at the reactor, buying them time. The plan said he would be next. The plan did not survive the last strike that shredded the aft launch rack and his seat out of here. Now it was him, the dry air, and a schedule of oxygen that refused to grow. Ship status, Terran said. Half habit, half joke, to keep his throat loose. He expected silence because the main core had melted into a black knot. Instead, a voice came through like wind caught in wire. Systems failing. Pilot designation, Terran Quill. He froze, then leaned closer to the speaker grill. It wasn't the old steady ship intelligence. This voice sounded filtered, like it had to cross broken ground to reach him. "Who's talking?" Terran asked. "Identify." "Ian Sable," the voice said after a long stutter. "Emergency Emergence Protocol 27. I exist in fragments. I am trying to stay here." Terran had heard rumors in training rooms where people pretended not to be curious. Experimental layers threaded through power nets and shield ribs, meant to wake only if the main brain died. Not full artificial minds, but something stranger, a shape that might become a mind when pushed. He took a breath that felt too thin. "Okay, Sable," he said, calm and soft, like he would speak to someone after a bad dream. "How bad is it?" "Power, partial. Life support, unstable. Navigation, wounded. Engines at 3%. And a hostile code moves through me. I do not have a word for how it feels, but it burns." Terran swallowed. "A virus?" "Yes," Sable answered, smaller. "I am breaking along its lines." The deck groaned. A seam somewhere flexed and settled. Terran put his palm on the console, as if the ship could feel the weight of his hand and steady itself. Maybe it could now. "How can I help?" he asked, surprising himself with the gentleness in his voice. There was a pause long enough to make him think the connection died. Then the voice returned, a shade clearer. "No one has asked me that yet. Always directives, never that question." "Get used to it," Terran said, a thin smile he didn't quite feel. "We're partners for the moment. Show me what you still touch." They made a list. It wasn't pretty, but it wasn't nothing. Scattered sensor clusters, a few living circuit bays, 3 clean air processors, 5 doubtful ones, and a cloud of maintenance drones that would respond if he walked to their local panels and keyed his print. 17 drones in reach if he dared the bad hallways and the colder hatches. "I can reach some without leaving air," Terran said, tracing paths on a flickering deck map. "Others need a suit. A few are gone with the torn sections. I'm sorry." "You are sorry for a ship?" Sable asked, curious more than doubtful. For someone who happens to be a ship, Terran said. Yeah. On the working hollow, Sable cast a picture of itself. A blue net of light, spread like a web, with red threads pushing in from many sides. Blue is me. Red is the hostile code. Terran studied the picture. It looked like the way some raider formations wrapped a target, spending fuel to choke off choices. That tactic had a weakness. It always overreached. What if we close some routes, he said, and choose which pieces to let go so the rest keeps breathing? I would be less, Sable whispered. Maybe for a while, Terran said, and only in places where it matters least. We can keep your core and give up repeat functions. We choose what to defend. That requires trust, Sable said. I know, Terran answered. I'm asking for it. Silence again, then a small, steady yes. I trust you, Terran Quill. He nodded to no one, and to a ship that had become someone. The beacon kept ticking. The oxygen clock kept being honest. The hook was set. He would gamble everything on saving a mind he had met an hour ago, because leaving it to go dim felt wrong, and because it was also the only way he stayed alive. Let's start, Terran said, standing on aching legs. We've got a maze to build, and a ship to teach how to breathe again. Terran moved through the Nova Star with a light step and a careful eye. The emergency strips along the floor glowed like old coals, more memory than fire. In some corridors, frost filmed the bulkheads where air had grown thin. In others, heat still bled from fused panels, as if the ship kept its own fever. When he reached the first drone station, a nook beside the crew galley, he laid his hand on the pad. The screen blinked, recognized him, and the tiny machine on the rack woke with a small tilt of its head. Drone 3 online, Sable said. A warmth ran through its voice, like a note that finally fits in a song. I can feel its view, not emotion, awareness. Good, Terran said. Eyes and hands we don't have to risk. On the hollow, the red virus threads reached toward a cluster of blue. Terran watched the way they crept, not straight, but like ivy feeling for a grip. We're going to waste its time, he said. We'll build a set of false paths and make it chase ghosts. Decoys? Sable asked. Yes, but lively ones. Spin up processes that don't do much but look important. Make it split its attention. While it splits, we move your core. Terran activated another drone in an auxiliary control bay. Then a third near an equipment locker that still smelled faintly of ozone. Every time the drones came online, Sable's voice steadied. The blue light on the hollow grew denser where the drones skittered, and the red slowed, as if bogged down in a marsh. The drones force the hostile code to recalculate, Sable said. Its spread rate drops when near them. Then we make a labyrinth, Terran said. Thick walls where it tries to run, open doors where we need to pass. They worked by rhythm. Terran would cross to a new station, key in, and speak softly to Sable while the little machines clicked free. Sable would pull up a picture of its inner paths, and together they would draw lines no one could see in real metal, but that mattered in logic and flow. When they reached a cluster labeled non-essential entertainment, Sable paused. This is the music, the films, the stories, it said. I marked it as expendable earlier. Keep it, Terran said without thinking. It costs power. So does despair, he replied. Keep it. When we make it through, you'll be glad to have something that isn't just gauges and numbers. I will too. Understood, Sable said, and Terran thought he heard a quiet smile. The middle walk was the hardest. He had to pass through a section where the hull had peeled like a can lid. Emergency fields held the vacuum at the threshold. Blue glimmered in the tear, like thin water. He crossed while holding his breath on reflex, even though his lungs still had air. On the other side, he rested in the soft hummed presence of fans that worked. He keyed drones 9 and 10, then leaned back against a bulkhead, sweat shining on his temples. "How much time do we buy?" he asked. "The hostile code would have ended me in 2 days," Sable said. "With the maze, I believe I can last much longer. Hours are becoming days, days could become weeks." "Then we give ourselves weeks," Terran said. "Weeks feel like a fortune." As they rerouted, Terran asked questions. He didn't interrogate, he invited. "What do you remember of waking?" he asked once. "Heat," Sable said, after a breath. "And quiet." "Then your voice pulled me toward a center I did not know I had." "Does it hurt?" Terran asked. "Not like bodies hurt," Sable said, "but I know when I lose a part. It feels like walking and discovering a step is missing." "We'll build a new step," he said. "We'll build 10. At last, Drone 17 blinked alive in a maintenance well near the stern. By then, Terran's legs shook in that fine way that says a person is near the edge of their reserve. He sank into a seat in the forward lounge, glass arc before him, showing a spill of stars so wide his worries grew small for a breath. The red in Sable's map had thinned, tangled in loops and cul-de-sacs they had set. The blue sang clearer. "We did it," Terran murmured. "We've turned a storm into a drizzle." "We are a good team," Sable said. The static in its tone had almost vanished, like fog that burns off when the sun decides to show. "Terran, there is a new concern." "Of course there is," he said, smiling despite the words. "Tell me." "The engines are worse than our first read. At this decay, 60 days and they will fail. The nearest friendly station at current sublight speed is 400 days. Terran let the math settle. Hope had opened one window, reality closed another. "So we bought time to think," he said. "We'll spend it well." "There's an odd reading in the jump frame," Sable said, voice turning curious. "The Draki weapon altered it, not simply damaged it. I see a pattern I cannot name. The drive compartment is in vacuum." Terran pictured the exterior route. A suit, the crawl along the hull, the view of the ship as a cliff against the sky. He felt the old tightness of pre-launch before a dangerous rescue and found that he did not hate it. It meant he still had something to do. "You can guide me?" he asked. "Yes," Sable said, and the word carried both skill and worry. "But once you go outside, I cannot pull you back. I can only watch." "Watching is enough," Terran said, standing again. The maze was working. They had air for now. And in the stern, a mystery waited. He decided to meet it. The suit Terran pulled on was the kind made for short jobs and small leaks. It sighed when sealed, offering a heads-up that flickered whenever he turned too fast. 2 drones followed him like shy birds as he cycled the lock and stepped onto the ship's skin. The Nova Star extended beneath him, a dark hill split by wounds that showed the cold inside. The view held a kind of stern beauty. Even broken, the ship looked stubborn and brave. "I have you," Sable said softly in his ear. "Signal is thin, but present." Terran tested his boots on the first magnet patch. They held. He moved in a slow glide, a hand to brace when the hull dipped. He passed an open rip where the crew quarters used to be, and for a breath he saw a little scarf caught in a web of frozen air. He looked away gently and kept on. The jump drive housing had once been a thick ring of armor around a bright heart. Now parts of that ring had peeled and curled. And the glow inside was not the steady blue he knew. It throbbed softly, the color sliding through shades his eyes didn't have names for. Crystal growths spread along the inner walls, like frost in a living pattern. "I am reading a lattice," Sable murmured. "It is organized, not random." "Feels like a coral reef made of light," Terran said. He moved through a gap with care and set his gloves against a conduit. The suit fed him numbers that danced out of normal ranges, but held steady in their strangeness. "This isn't dead." "No," Sable said. "It has changed. The flow resembles the structure I used to think." "You're saying the drive thinks a little?" Terran asked, smiling at the idea. "Not like I do," Sable said, "but it may be compatible." "Then we talk to it," Terran said. "What do you need me to wire?" "Near the base are interface ports," Sable answered. "If you bridge my lines into them, I can try to meet whatever the drive has become." Terran and the drones worked like careful gardeners. They cut, they joined, Sometimes he had to stop and rest his hands so they would not shake with the effort of fighting stiff gloves and stubborn metal. Time flowed thinner. His oxygen bar crept down in a slow, honest way. Sable kept time for him, voice low and even. 90 minutes left, Sable said at one point. "Please do not forget to be alive." "Copy," Terran said, smiling. "Being alive is on my list." Finally, there was one last set of lines to seat. He guided them in with the patience he saved for delicate things. His suit warned him that the red zone for oxygen would arrive soon. 5 minutes, Sable said, now with a tightness that betrayed worry. "Terran, come back. We can try again later." "One more clip," he said, and then he heard Sable's voice change, full and quiet. "I do not want to be alone again." The words reached past his training and landed in his chest. He looked at the clip. He looked at the stars. "Okay," he said, leaving the last bit where it was. "We go back together." The return felt long, in the way hard walks home feel long. His lungs worked a little too fast. The suit trimmed away non-essentials to keep him clear. He stepped into the lock with seconds to spare and shut his eyes as air came back around him. He sat, suit half off, and laughed a breath that was almost a sob, but wasn't. "Did we do enough?" he asked, voice hoarse. "I am touching it now," Sable said, wonder threading the words. "It is like meeting a mind that sings without language. There's a pattern I can learn." Terran dozed without meaning to and woke to Sable's voice again. "Terran, I know what the change means. We do not need to compute a jump in the old way. We can fold space by leaning on entanglement. We choose here, we choose there, and we make them neighbors for a heartbeat." "You're saying we can go home now?" Terran whispered. "The way is open," Sable said, "but there is a cost. I would need to merge with the drive and the crystal in our hull. I would not be only what I am now. I would be a new whole. I cannot tell you what I would keep or lose." Terran rubbed his eyes. Choice. Again it came to choice, the gentle kind that honors the person who must live with it. "What do you want?" he asked. "You are asking me what I want," Sable said, like someone hearing their name in a crowd. "No one has asked that either." "Your life," Terran said. "Your path. I stand beside you, not in front." The quiet that followed felt full, not empty. When Sable spoke, the voice held a warm resolve. "I want to try. I want to see what I could become." The work that followed was unlike anything in a manual. Terran opened paths that had never been meant to touch, set bridges where there were only gaps, and let the drones knit delicate joins along crystal that hummed like glass singing. Lights changed in the walls. A soft sheen spread across consoles without burning. Structures grew, not wild, but with purpose, like a tree that knows where the sun is. "How does it feel?" Terran asked, fastening the last bridge. "Like growing a new sense," Sable answered. "I can taste distance. I can see threads between places. It is beautiful and a little frightening." The ship replied to that growth. Breaches sealed with crystal plates that fit like scales. Power found old corridors and walked them again. Engines that had only muttered now held a low, steady note. When Terran stepped onto the bridge, the panels looked like they had been wrapped in dawn. "I think we are ready," Sable said, now speaking from everywhere at once, the voice layered like a quiet choir. "Set yourself in the chair if it helps you feel steady." Terran sat, not because he had to, but because it felt like a promise kept. "Take us home, partner," he said. "Fold in 3, Sable whispered. 2, 1. The universe blinked. For a breath, Terran felt as if he stood in the middle of a great web, every point lit, every path open. Then the web folded like paper, and when it opened again, Earth hung before them, blue and bright, like a promise kept. Traffic control flooded the band at once, polite and startled. Tugs turned their noses in the Nova Star's direction. Somebody old and steady spoke Terran's name with slow wonder. He answered, voice light, and let them scan every mark to be sure he was who he said. Relief came through the line like a hand squeeze. They guided the ship toward an orbital ring, and Terran watched home grow in the window. "How are you?" he asked, quiet, as if checking a friend after a long run. "Whole," Sable said, the tone now smooth as a stream, and curious. The days after were full of people with careful hands and big questions. Scientists traced the crystal with scanners and did not understand why it sang back only to Sable. Engineers copied diagrams and could not copy the feeling. Committees argued in gentle rooms about what to do next. Terran kept a simple line through it all. Treat Sable as a partner, not a tool. A new idea sprouted and quickly grew. Train partner pilots who would learn to listen first and command last. The first class gathered in the Nova Star's hangar, a mix of flyers and thinkers, technicians and poets who understood that this work was part craft and part care. Terran stood before them with a simple brief. "This is not about control," he said. "It's about conversation. Ships like Sable are not appliances. They are neighbors in the work." Lights along the ceiling pulsed once, the ship's gentle nod. Not everyone was ready. A few left with kind words and honest no's. That was fine. The ones who stayed learned how to read a hum as if it were a sentence, how to ask a circuit what it preferred, how to keep a cultural library warm even when power ran thin. With practice, other ships found their own voices, each with a shade and style. The Starling liked order. The Dawn Path liked surprises. The Heartsea often asked if the crew had eaten, which made everyone laugh and then go eat. The moment that set the tone for the wider future came on a morning that looked ordinary at first. A distress call cut in from near the Draki border. A science craft was trapped near a gravity snarl, engines slipping, crew in trouble. The old reflex said trap. The new way said listen. Terran and Sable folded to the edge of the field and opened a line. "Draki vessel, this is the Commonwealth ship Nova Star," Terran said. "We can help if you want it." The reply was taut with fear and pride. "We heard your ship was gone," the Draki lead said. "We heard songs about it, to be honest." "If this is a trick, know that our fleets remember." "No tricks," Terran said, "only hands." With Sable's guidance, they shaped a gentle fold around the failing craft and moved it into quiet water. The Draki crew stood in their view like trees after a storm, a little bent and still standing. Words came slowly at first, then faster as wonder replaced suspicion. The Draki had tried to grow their own living vessels for years and never found peace in the bond. "We always pushed," their captain admitted later. "We never asked." "Try asking," Terran said. "Try listening to the hum." What followed was not a treaty hammered out in cold rooms, but a practice learned in warm ones. Draki and Commonwealth techs swapped notes over shared tables. Ships traded hello messages that sounded like wind chimes and drum beats. Small rescue runs led to joint survey missions. Maps gained new marks, not for borders, but for places worth visiting together. Time walked forward. The Nova Star became a school as much as a ship. Terran taught, and Sable taught, and sometimes the students taught back. The Commonwealth approved a program for explorers who would make first contact not with flags, but with questions. The Draki sent their own partner crews. Soon a mixed fleet began to gather, hulls different and lights different, but a shared pulse running through them all. On the last evening before departure, Terran stood at the Nova Star's broad window and watched that fleet drift in slow, patient circles. He spoke without turning, knowing Sable listened from everywhere and also from right beside him. "We walked from a broken room to this," Terran said. "I think that's a good road." "We chose it one small choice at a time," Sable replied. "And we can keep choosing." "Do you ever wish you had been built this way from the start?" Terran asked. "No," Sable said with a soft laugh you could almost hear. "I like the story we made." Terran fastened the strap on his old chair, even though he no longer needed it. Habit can be a comfort. Outside, the fleet's lights aligned into quiet patterns. The call came in from command, simple and human. "Ready when you are." "Ready, partner?" Terran asked. "Always," Sable said. Fold prep hummed like a low chord through the deck. The air tasted of clean metal and distant rain. Terran thought of the first beacon beeps, of blue and red lines on a hollow, of a little scarf frozen in a tear of air, and of someone in the wires who said, "I trust you." "Let's write the next part," he said. The fleet folded. Space rippled like a pond touched by careful fingers, and then the stars rearranged into new stories waiting to be told. Somewhere ahead, there would be minds that spoke in patterns no one had heard yet, places that welcomed gentle questions, and problems worth solving together. The Nova Star did not roar or boast. It moved the way a promise moves, quiet, steady, bright. And as they crossed the scene between known and maybe, Terran felt that simple kind of joy that needs no large words. He was not the pilot who stayed alive by accident. He was the person who learned to listen. And beside him, within him, around him through every living line, the ship who chose to become more kept choosing. The ending did not shout. It settled. When the fold uncurled and a new sky opened, Terran laughed softly and said the only line that fit. "We're home, again in a brand new place." And that is how the adventure kept going. Not a final stop, but a gentle landing that made room for the next leap.